who are joining me today for this session. This session is going to be led by myself, and we have some experts in AI that will be talking to you about how your business can use data to rebound from this pandemic. We'll be doing three things. We'll be looking at what are the data sets out there from an economic perspective. What are these data points telling us, and how can you read these data points? We'll be examining what do we mean by flattening the curve. Once we get a sense of the data points that are out there and how you can read these data points, we'll then go into what can you do with data. We talk about data as the new oil. What can you do, depending on the sector of business that you're in, what can you do with this data from an AI perspective? We'll be demystifying some of the glamour around AI and looking at the nuts and bolts of it. How does it work? How does it render value for your business? And what could you be doing? And lastly, we'll look at some modeling techniques from an AI perspective that can help you with your business. Joining me today, I have Professor Sam Plati, who is faculty at Durham College. We have Abhilash Marecharla, who is a senior principal investigator at the AI Hub. We have Ruchi Rajkumar and Mauricio, who manage projects and our social media at the Hub. And we have Noopa, who has previously managed projects at the AI Hub and is also currently a PhD candidate. Before we begin, I'd like to turn the stage to the town of Ajax, who have graciously put this event together. And I'll turn it over to Mayor Collier to say a couple of words. Mayor Shaun, over to you.
Oh, hi, Ali. How you doing today?
Not too bad, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I just want to thank you and your AI Hub team for working with us to bring another round of events designed to educate businesses and residents on the importance of technology and data. We really appreciate working together on this. It's so important. I just want to introduce a couple of my council colleagues who are also on the call. We've got Regional Councillor Marilyn Crawford, who you can wave, and Councillor Rob Tyler Morin. Our council is very interested in this as well. We also have several members of our economic development team on the call, being Lisa Hausch and Andrew Poirier as well. So thank you to them for joining us today as well. Just my opening comments, during uncertain times, I'm really pleased that the town of Ajax is able to continue to provide the in-demand training desired by businesses. We're grateful for the partnerships we've formed to be able to bring the AI and Ajax series to you with timely information. And I understand that today's session will provide key insights into how businesses can use and evaluate data to help with COVID-19 recovery. Tonight, I hope you'll join us for our team's Little Doctors to explain COVID-19 to kids, parents, and grandparents as well. Thanks a lot for joining us today, everybody. Hope you enjoy the session. And Ali, turn it back over to you to get started.
Perfect. Thank you. So the first question that I have is for Sam and Noopa. And I want you to sort of think from the perspective of businesses who have expertise in what it is that they do. Some sell food, some sell clothes, whatever have you. Not all of them are familiar with the data sets that are out there that can actually tell them when is a good time to rebound, or when is a good time to sort of reopen your sales online, or when is a good time to get back into hiring. There's a lot of data sets that we can use to guide ourselves. Sam, I want to start with you. What are the data sets that are out there, and what should people be looking at to get a sense of, is it time now to sort of jumpstart and come back into the economic war? Sam?
Thank you, Ali. Some of the basic data sets that are available are actually provided by the Stats Canada. So let me just share my screen very quickly, just to show you what's available very quickly. So if you go to the Stats Canada website, you can actually start seeing what some of the key indicators are. So the first one that I want to show you is your GDP, or gross domestic product, which shows that we're on a downward trend. So we know that a lot of businesses now have been shuttered, or a lot of businesses have now moved to an online delivery. So what we're seeing is a very large decrease in GDP. But another key one that you should be looking at is also employment. So with what we said federally and for provincially, we see that there's a lot of businesses now, especially on the part-time sector, where you're seeing a lot of businesses now shutter their businesses in terms of their employment. So that you see a big and a large spike on the unemployment rate. So just let me unshare my screen very quickly, and just to have a quick discussion. So if we look at GDP overall, just because the economy now is edging towards recession doesn't mean that businesses, or all businesses, are going to edge towards recession. So this is actually a good opportunity to start looking at your business and saying, so what can I do? So digital marketing or from a digital point of view, can I now change my business model in order to accommodate that? Now, the unemployment rate being so high now, you have now a large sample size that we can look at and saying, so we have a lot of people looking for work, a lot of talented people looking for work. So this is a good opportunity to actually hire top talent for your business.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. And that raises an important question, is that these data sets that are out there, and Sam, if we can just sort of stick with you just for another 30 seconds or so, these data sets can be particularly challenging to look at because a lot of folks are seeing it for the first time. What do you recommend in terms of how can you ease yourself when you're looking at these data sets as a business to make those decisions? The data set you show us can be a little consuming to the eyes. What's a good starting point according to you?
So believe it or not, StatsCan actually provides a very quick paragraph summary of each of the data sets. So it actually tells you what the month-over-month rate is, but also tells you what is it doing to the economy. So for example, GDP, for example, gross domestic product. We know that, you know, from an economic point of view, if it's 2 successive quarters, we're in a recession. Now, what it will actually tell you is that, are we really in a recession, or is this just based on what's happening with COVID-19? So once COVID-19 stops or all the restrictions are easing, are we going to go back to some sense of normality or normality in terms of the businesses? So I'll give you a big example. So all the centers have now opened up if you're selling for planting or gardening. Now, Ford has now just said that, well, by May 24, we're going to have a lot more businesses opening up. But Canadian Tire and other businesses have found ways to work online. So we don't see those numbers yet. All we know is that some businesses are highly affected because they can't go online or they can't provide the online service. So I think the real numbers we have to start looking at is how many businesses are actually not going to open up again once we have the COVID-19 restrictions lifted.
Makes sense. Thank you very much, Sam. Noopa, I want to turn the conversation to you now, because Sam's given us a sense of, yes, there are some dangerous trends that you're seeing in the economy, but when you are seeing a low slide, you're also seeing what those opportunities are. I've always maintained this, that in the world of AI, everything is a data point. Even silence is a data point. And there's something that you can reveal, that you can capture from that. Noopa, can you talk a little bit about what data sets you're looking at and how you are making some projections on when do you think certain things will start? When do you think certain businesses might start to see some sense of the new normal? Noopa?
Thank you, Ali. So one important thing that we were prepared in this pandemic was we had a plan in mind. We know that all the data has to be collected at one particular point, and Stats Canada have really done a great job in that. So we know if I need to find a data set, I just have to go to Stats Canada. And another important thing I also found about Stats Canada was that it not only provided us information about the health data set, but it also gave us a lot of information about the economic perspectives of how businesses can reopen and all those things. And adding to what Sam has said, so Stats Canada have not only provided a good data set, but they have also constructed such a good visualization board as how Sam have demonstrated. So it's not necessary that if I'm a person who don't understand this data set and who don't know how to work with these data set, at least by that simple visualization boards that has been projected by the Stats Canada, it's very easy to come up with a conclusion that maybe in this particular time that it's time to reopen our economy. So that's definitely a good point to start, to look into Stats Canada, understand the visualization board, and try to understand how it is going to add benefit to our businesses.
Okay. Noopa, let's unpack that a little bit more, because we've gone into the conversation. It's been about 8 minutes. You've used a couple of terms which I want people to get familiar with. If we retrace a little bit, Sam's pointed us to Stats Canada. I've shared the link to howsmyflattening.ca. I've shared links to all of these different data sets people can be looking at. But you've used a couple of terms like visualization, like dashboards, etc.
Right.
Unpack that a little bit. because I want folks to understand what is it that they need to get from these data sets, and then we'll go into what they can do with some of these data sets.
Yeah, so visualization is the best way to convey a story. So if you have a data set and if you have a good dashboard to visualize this data set, it's a very straightforward conveying a story. And another important thing is that different data set tells us a different story, right? So it's not necessary that from a single data set, I could find answers to all my questions. So it is necessary to understand what a data set is capable about, and what sometimes as data analysis people we do is we only see our data set. We don't see what is not in our data set. Now that's more alarming and concerning. So if you look into all the data sets that's released by Stats Canada and even by the other John Hopkins and other universities which have been doing so along with University of Toronto, all they have like a more biased data set. They are just projecting the results of, if you take the health data set, they are just projecting the results of people who have those health constraints and who have been admitted to the hospitals, right? Whereas those people who were not tested but who had asymptomatic asymptotic symptoms, so those data are not being captured in those data sets. So that's something very alarming to us. So going back to visualization, it's a very great way to start. So I can share some of the links where I have seen some of the great visualization that has been happening. So
yeah, that would be very useful. I think this is a good way to sort of just invite people into understanding there is data out there that is telling you something about where things were, where things are at, and where things could be going. Now, I want to start focusing exclusively on where things could be going by looking at how we can use these data sets to empower our businesses. And this takes me to you, Abhilash. Abhilash, we at the AI Hub, we work with businesses from a variety of sectors: retail, financial, mortgages, you name it. We've done work with healthcare environments as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about what does a business need to be thinking about in terms of how can I use my data to rebound? Abhi?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. Hello, everyone. Thanks to this COVID-19 situation, most of the businesses are in fact moving online. And now there was a report which I was reading the other day. It's saying that there's a 26% increase in the online activity of all the businesses. And as Sam pointed out, the example of Canadian Tire, we've seen that Canadian Tire has moved its entire sales online, and they just offer a curbside pickup. Now, what this means is basically the marketing people can send online emails more frequently, and we have seen a spike in the increase of the rate at which people open those marketing emails now, because people are just online now. So this also gives us a very good use case for building a AI driven chatbot which could answer the customers what they want, like what are they looking for, are there any queries, are they looking for a particular element, something like that. Any specific queries regarding a product or the service can be answered online. So this is a great case for building a chatbot. We can use this data, and we have businesses like insurance and all with us. So insurance can use say a computer vision use case for the insurance claims, and there is a customer driven chatbots. We have seen that there is a lot of chatbot initiation from the customer side. It's not that the chatbot is popping up and we have to do. The customer is actually using the chatbot more now.
Yeah.
So there is an increase in the customer activity using the chatbots.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, Abhi, what you're pointing to is that now, because more and more customers are going to online environments to purchase, to make sales, or to do whatever they need to do, is that you need to optimize those online spaces.
Exactly.
Of course, there are some businesses that simply perhaps could not touch the online space. But I want to go to Sam and talk a little bit more about, let's take an example. If you can give us an example of a business and how they could potentially pivot using AI to, for example, improve their sales. Can you talk a little bit about some examples?
Sure. So if you look at a standard business let's say just a corner store that is allowed to stay open, but maybe a lot of people are being very hesitant to go into these stores. So people are wearing masks, and people are saying, I don't want to wait in line. So they can actually provide a very quick service. They can go online, create a simple web page using Wix or some of these very easy online tools where basically it says, XYZ corner store, click here and tell me what you need, and we'll have it ready. So when you arrive, come to the front of the store, and we'll have it right in front for you. You see that McDonald's have done this. All the larger chains, it's easier to do the digital transformation because they have the resources. They have actually the money. But how does a small business digitally transform? So that, digital transformation is very complex. You can't just say, okay, I'll just open up a Twitter account, I'll open up an online account, and I'll just wait until my business goes back to normal. So now you have to tap the customers. So I'll give you an example of small restaurants here in Whitby that me and my wife frequent. So they didn't know what really to do because they were mainly just eat in. So they sent an email to all their past 2 months reservations and said, oh, by the way, we're going to start doing online service. And if you're interested, go to our website and we're going to show you the menu. And so I actually told some people that live in the area saying, hey, by the way, did you know that this restaurant now offers online service? They didn't do any advertising. They just went to their existing base and said, by the way, I'm going to provide this service. And basically, they were hoping that customers like myself is going to spread the news as well. So that cost was zero. One quick email to your current base saying, here's what I'm going to do. And this business now is sold out. So most of the time when we want to buy our dinner, like once a week when we go there, if we don't order by 2 o'clock, they're sold out. So, and they're still doing no advertising.
Yeah, and I think, Sam, this brings up the key question here, is that you made mention of this restaurant. If you take that as a case study, is that they reached out to their database. Yeah. But there are a lot of customers right now, or a lot of businesses right now, that may not have had this process of maintaining that kind of database, that may not have access to it. So Noopa, I want to turn it to you because, here we are talking about AI can help your business rebound, but we are relying heavily on the data sets that exist to start saying, here's how we can segment your markets. Here's how many people buy lunch at this time, reach out to them at this time, et cetera, et cetera. What about those folks who have no data to begin with?
That would be a very difficult situation. But I think what this pandemic have done to the world is that, of course, we will recover from this very soon, but we are going to see a very different world after this. So people, even the very small businesses, would understand the importance of having and capturing more data points as they go, because they know if this coronavirus have a second wave, they know exactly that they should be prepared. So as soon as the economy reopens, we would see a very exponential transmission to this digital world. So that's something which is going to happen. Yeah. But unfortunately, people who don't have data, they are in a very, not in a good, in a bit of a disadvantaged stage. But even if, especially when it comes to restaurants, even if some restaurants agree to share their data set to another restaurant, it's not going to help them. And these data sets are more personal, that you can't place it in an open GitHub repository, right? So there is this whole idea of moving everything to open source, but there are some secure data that we cannot release into the public. So that's again a question we have to talk about, the ethics part of it, once all these are over with.
So let's work with this, because I think we're onto something here. We've come to an understanding of. We've come to an. Is that you? It's all good. So we've come to a good understanding right now of data, why you need data, what you can do, and what some businesses are doing. let's unpack it a little bit more and take that restaurant example. So the restaurant has lots of data sets. And Abhilash, let's start off with you. And the restaurant looks at you and gives you this data set and says, here's how many people eat lunch at 2 p.m. Here's how many people come in for dinner at 6 p.m. Here's how many people come in for breakfast at 10 a.m. Can you give me one example of what they could do with AI with a data set that tells them the time people are eating at? Abhi?
Yeah, so that would be a very useful data set to have, because we can first finalize or see, how much lunch we have to prepare, say, how much food we have to prepare for lunchtime, and how many people we need working, and what is the delivery rate. All that data is captured. And coming to the dinner, again, we have this data, and we can use this to forecast, okay, saying that this much amount of food has to be prepared, and this is the time where there is a lot of demand for, say, a particular item.
Yeah.
So all that insights can be drawn using that data.
Yeah. Ruchi, if you can unmute Sam, and I want to ask Sam, to get a little creative with these data sets. One of the projects that we worked on at the AI Hub in computer visioning was we take two images and we merge it together to create a third one, okay? Is there something that people can do with their data sets to start making recommendations to their clients as well, and to start pushing some new stuff? To give you one example, Uxbridge, where there's an animal farm out in Uxbridge, I forget the name, they've gotten creative by saying, hey, if you want to have one of our animals Zoom bomb your meeting, let us know, drop a donation of 40 or 50 bucks, and we'll have Charlie the donkey come to your meeting for 10 minutes. People have got creative. How can you get creative with using all of these data sets to say, hey, here's a recommendation on a different meal we've never made before, would you like to try? Any thoughts on that, Sam?
Actually, it's not as difficult as you may think. Capturing the information is pretty easy. So if you're doing any online ordering for your customers, you're already capturing what they're ordering. So you can do a very quick analysis in a data set or even in Excel to find what is the most frequent item bought. And if that person hasn't bought that item yet, you can recommend that, hey, did you know that most of our customers are actually trying this as well, or buying this as well as a complementary item? You see this a lot in grocery, where there's a reason why milk and bread don't go on sale together, because they're staples. So one will go on sale because they know that people are always going to buy milk and bread, for example. So you very rarely see them both going on sale together. And a lot of the time, for example, on the restaurant side, when you buy a meal, like, would you like wine with that? And so this restaurant, that's what it did. It actually started with just providing meals, but now it's saying, when you do your online order, it says, would you like to add alcohol with that? Either a bottle of wine or beer. Yeah. Automatically, it comes up as soon as you do your order. So you can actually do that for your online. So you're buying toilet paper, for example. Do you need any other products? Do you need hand sanitizer? Do you need paper towel, etc.? So you can actually link complementary products together in a data set very, very easily, where you know that if a customer buys one certain item, it's actually the average customer will actually buy the other items as well. So you can actually link those very easily in a data set. And with your own data set, you can actually start tracking on what the average consumer is buying together, and use that as a recommender as well.
Makes sense. And I think, and I'm seeing some of the questions that are coming up as well, is, all right, this all sounds good. How do I get started? What tools do I, it costs money to build these recommenders. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But Noopa, I also want to sort of, moving above and beyond the restaurant example. I know Councillor Rob Tyler mentioned examples of stores like Rona. And I know we're looking at sales, so on and so forth. But what about service delivery? For example, mental health service delivery or medical service deliveries. Where do you think AI can come into these industries, which are predominantly high touch and in person? What do you think companies need to be thinking about there?
So AI has a very great potential in the health sectors. So some of the important projects that's going around AI and health, especially in this pandemic, was the first thing which I really found interesting was the research going on with the help of University of Cambridge, where they have come up with an application, and they are trying to collect data so that by depending upon how people cough and breathe and speak, they are able to detect if to identify whether a person do have coronavirus or not. So if you are interested to donate some data to them, I'll post the link here, so that they are just building the application. They just have now the application for collecting the data. So once this data collection is done, I'm quite sure that they will come up with a good model. So I'll just post that link here. So another important application which I found very interesting came from the, actually it is being used at the doctors at Boston, wherein which they are remotely monitoring COVID patients using AI. So we know how the risk of the frontline workers is to come in contact with COVID patients. And that's something people are really talking about and worried about. So how is that we can protect our doctors and nurses from getting COVID-19? So that's why they came up with this application. It's actually been used in the hospital at Boston, wherein which they are remotely monitoring the patients in order to record their, or to see the variation in the breathing pattern or sleeping pattern and all those things. So these two are some of the, like, a very good research direction wherein which people are taking in the healthcare sector. And also in Canada, one of the important research which I really found interesting is done by the University of Waterloo, wherein which they have come up with a computer vision model that could identify from your chest radiography X-ray whether a person is infected by COVID-19 or not. And the best part of this research was that they were not actually doing this research for COVID-19, they were doing it for other purpose, but still, since they had the model in place, now they just have to feed a new data set to this model. And also another important thing they have done is that they have released this model as open source. So most of the companies are using this application to build on top of this. And also I have come to know that they have released two different models. One model is which you can literally run in a small laptop, whereas another model is a very heavy model which need more GPU and processing. So people are actually in this pandemic coming together and contributing their ideas and resources to get through us this pandemic more safer. So these are some of the interesting areas I found in healthcare.
Yeah, and I think we're on to something here, which is, we've looked at the importance of data. We've looked at what AI can do for you. For example, if you're running a restaurant, you're running sales, or you're running something that is high touch, but now you can't meet in front of people. But now the question is, where do I get started from? And Noopa, I want to start off with you. We were talking about the idea of, if a company has, so let's assume a company has no data whatsoever. They just started, let's say it's a teen company that has just got one data point, which is who their customers are, but they have no other data sets. You started talking about stuff which is like, look at some open source data sets that are out there. Can you talk a little bit about three things? What is an open source data set? Right. What does it have? And you also mentioned called something like a GitHub repository. Right. Can you talk that a little bit for the audience, especially the business owners that want to start looking at these applications?
Right. So the open source data sets are one that is available in the internet. And of course, the one thing that you have to make sure while using an open source data set is that it is published by a reliable source. Right? So I don't want to collect a data and build a model and unfortunately realize that I collected this data from an unreliable data source. So you don't want that to happen. So whenever you take an open source data set, make sure that who have published that data set. Right? So so I have been continuously following the data set published by Stats Canada during this pandemic. And another important contributors of this data set is the Johns Hopkins University. So they have come up with a really great structured data. Again, that's a very important term, structured data. We know data is everywhere, but if you just read a text document in an internet and try to come up with a model from that, it's not going to be of help for you. So the Johns Hopkins University especially provides a very clean, structured data set so that you have to do minimum of pre-processing of those data set, and it could be directly fed into the model. So the GitHub is a repository wherein which we can find these data set, and again, as I mentioned, the source of the data set is important. But there is also, I have mentioned this before, but there is also this this concept that not every data set is available online. So if a more personalized data set is not available online, if you look into the health data set, you have a data set which conveys the mortality rate in different countries, but you don't get any personal information about that person. For example, if you wanted to see if a particular disease is affecting coronavirus, we say that people who have a heart disease or is diabetic, they are more prone to coronavirus, but we don't get those data set from the open repositories because they are more personal, and there is this whole concern of ethics. So you have to make sure that you're not looking for a personalized data set which contain information about the users.
Thank you, Noopa. And just to sort of, emphasize this for everyone is that and I've said this before whenever I've spoken, to begin with anything from an AI perspective, you have to look at what data sets you have, but then you have to drill further into it, how structured they are, how much can you manipulate these data sets, are you allowed to use these data sets? There are a lot of questions from there. A very simple example that we can give you of a company that has sort of rebounded using data sets is, look at your average store that's looking at, what Sam just spoke about, is looking at how they want to sell online seats for food, for example, when to push different food types to people, looking at purchasing patterns, drawing something from it to say, what could somebody want in a particular community? Abhilash, you had your hand up and I was going to come to you anyway, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so just to add to what Shaun, what Sam and you were saying, in the case of restaurants, the receipts or the bills which are being generated each time when an order is placed is a great source of data.
Yeah.
We can strip that bill into all minute pieces, item by item, and see who is purchasing what and which item is in more demand. So that will help us in formulating the pipeline, the supply, demand and supply pipeline, the cash flow, and we can also forecast like the cash flow.
Yep. No, great point. And I want to just take that a little bit further, Abhilash. Noopa also mentioned something around unstructured data, because now a business might look at it, whether it's a cleaning business, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's an insurance sales organization, whatever it is, they will look at structured data and start to unpack it. But there's also unstructured data and things that, for example, Facebook conversations that you may have on a chatbot, or what me and you are doing here right now. What do we mean by unstructured data? Can you give us some examples? And what could a business do with unstructured pieces of data?
Well, I make this analogy all the time. Unstructured data is like water. We have so much water available, but only 3% of it is potable. The same thing is with data. The world is drowning with data. Every time we talk, we do something, data is being generated all the time. But it is stored in randomly, not in a perfect format. That is unstructured data. And now we take the best way to begin with unstructured data is take that unstructured data and kind of categorize them, so classify them, or make them into pockets, saying like to understand what they're talking about. In the case of a Facebook chat, take the chat and try to figure out the keywords in those facts and to understand what the chat is being about. What people are discussing in that chat, what is the tone in that chat? Is it a positive sentiment or a negative sentiment, something like that?
Yeah. Now, there are various ways in which it can be used. And one of the things that we do a lot of is sentiment analysis. So, for example, again, if you're doing sales, how likely is someone to buy, or how likely is someone to be receptive to your message at a certain point of time? Should you send them a message at 7 p.m. or should we send them a message at whatever time it is, just reworking it in different ways. Now, I want to take it a little bit further now. So Sam, one of the questions that I've got on WhatsApp actually was, can you talk a little bit about how manufacturing companies have also been looking at AI, especially at a time when you can't have high contact? Can you talk a little bit about what some folks could do with AI from a computer visioning perspective for quality control as an example? Sam?
From a manufacturing point of view, it's becoming very interesting. you see now that manufacturing sector, it was already suffering in Canada. And now we're at a point where, is this going to be the final nail, unfortunately, in the coffin for manufacturing? Because Canada was already struggling with it. What can we do from an AI perspective? So you're seeing a lot of manufacturers now retooling their businesses. So Ford gave a lot of money to some of these manufacturers and said, what can you do to help us? And what's happening now is manufacturers are seeing this as a different revenue stream. So for example, I think we're up to now 4 or 5 businesses now that have retooled their businesses to now start creating masks for our frontline folks. But now from a manufacturing point of view, what can they actually do to increase their business once, I guess, the pandemic is over or we start getting easing? Now what AI can do is actually start looking at some more feasibility analysis in terms of understanding where the business has gone. So for the auto sector, for example, you're seeing that the parts manufacturers and et cetera now are probably suffering the most because the dealers just started reopening this week. So, they had almost 2 months of, people still need cars, but people are not coming into these showrooms, et cetera, right? But other manufacturing companies are actually suffering as well. And actually they're opening up more online stores. So eBay, for example, and Amazon are now seeing the largest increase on online stores for manufacturers, or now they're trying, instead of trying to sell directly to another large organizations, guess what? They're selling to the consumer.
Yeah.
So now manufacturers now are opening up in a new business side or a new sector, and they're actually going towards more of a consumer model where they're saying, we do have a high demand for our products, and we might have been just providing it to just another business to resell it for us. Well, let's go to the consumer. So I'll give you an example. So Brock Brewery, as you know, got a license 2 months ago to start doing hand sanitizer. And the beer store, alcohol is not suffered actually. It's one of the few businesses that actually have increased since we're staying at home. But they've now retooled their business, and now they're selling hand sanitizers. So at first they were selling it just to large corporations. You can actually now go on the website and actually buy hand sanitizer delivered to your home from Brock Breweries. So I think manufacturers now are looking at what else can we do with our business? And if we're manufacturing XYZ product, can we retool a section of our business? And how quickly can we do it in order to look at in-need demand? So the breweries now, I think now almost all the breweries now are doing hand sanitizer.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think, one of the things that we've also started seeing is that myself and Abhilash have had calls from some companies looking at, their production cycles, and where typically they would manually assess whether a product is ready to go to the market. Now they're able to use some computer vision technologies that are able to take pictures of different segments of the product and then look at, does this meet certain defined criteria? So there are, for example, the work that we're doing with Collier Innovations is a good example of computer visioning technologies being applied for quality assurance, right? So there are many things that can be used. Now, I know we have about 10 minutes left, and I do want to sort of oscillate between the questions. So I'll take about 3 questions that I've seen then weave it into our conversation. Number one is, and I think this is hands-on and we need to address this, and I'll go to Noopa. Noopa, Andrew is asking, there are some businesses like dentists or massage therapists. Really, is there, besides just trying to sell, what can they sell? Is there anything that you can imagine random that they could use with AI, or are there some businesses that you feel that even AI can't come to the rescue?
I'm not sure about massage therapists, how AI can help them in this context of COVID-19. But dentist, I believe there is a bit of a scope there, wherein which if to come up with a chatbot where you could answer some basic questions. I know this project did not happen at the AI Hub, but the one project when at the very beginning, which was a dental company, I don't remember the name. So because they have so much of patients coming in, so they wanted to collect their pre-existing conditions, so that when they come in, they don't have to sit and wait, right? So one of the things that every hospitals and healthcare system and the dentist are making sure is in this COVID-19 is that they don't want people to come in their hospitals or in the clinic and wait there. So this is where AI can come in to help, where in which you could monitor the appointments, just ask people to come during the time when their appointment is there, and to collect all the the prerequisites of their consultation before through a chatbot or any other services, so that even the time you spend to the doctor or at the dentist would be very short.
Yeah. I think one of the articles that I was reading out of the US was about using AI to sort of initiate more the social distancing piece, how to run those more efficiently within high traffic areas, and making predictions along those lines and telling people ahead of time what they could be expecting. So there's a lot of future prediction that can come into this that could be used.
So Ali, I'm just going to add to that. There's a company called Landing AI. So what they're doing is they're geo-mapping certain cities. And then basically what they're doing with the existing cameras is they're seeing how far apart they are. And if they are not the 2 meters, an email notification would go out to either an officer or whoever to say, this area is a hot area, people are not social distancing, people are not abiding by the rules. And this is just cameras looking at how close they are together. And it's already been implemented, I believe, in 6 cities in the United States.
Great point. Thank you, Sam.
Yes,
Another question.
like that. And with the same concept, there is an app being developed which you can download on your phone, and it will, like, if we are not maintaining any social distance, it will sound an alarm.
Yeah.
So
they're able to predict where you're at.
Yes. Yeah.
Now there are obvious questions around how we can use and where to begin from. So Sam, in your case, you've done a whole bunch of projects at the AI Hub. You know how it begins. For companies in Ajax, so companies in Durham region, where should they start off? What should they be looking at their first step if they want to say, look, I have data, I want to do something with AI. What do you think are the top 2 things they need to do in order to get started?
I think they have to define their problem first of all. So what problem are they trying to solve? And we can't boil like the ocean, but if there's a specific problem that they have or they want to improve. So for example, let's say that they're having a really hard time with people coming in between 11 and 1 o'clock, and they're always slammed, and people look into the store and they just walk out and don't even go into. So maybe doing an app and to understand, you need more people between 11 and 1 o'clock, or just, very simple problem there. But we had that real estate company that we worked for, one of my first projects, if you remember, Ali, and they were trying to determine, if I had $100,000 or X amount of money, what can I do? Should I invest it? Should I buy property? Or should I just sit on it? And then asking 10 to 12 questions, the AI Hub developed a very great predictor on where they should do with their money, and based on what they have. And I think the same can be done with some of these small businesses. If we can understand what their key problem is, maybe it's revenue, or maybe it's reduce costs, or drive more people to the store, either online or physical, we can then look at the data and find out, so what areas do need improvements? So the Gap and Banana Republic have done something very interesting. If you look in, so I've subscribed to both, and you'll see that usually on Wednesday or Thursday, they'll have a sale between 5 and 9 o'clock. So what they've determined is that they can't get a lot of people in between 5 and 9 on certain days. So they're trying to change buying habits, which means that they have probably a staffed store with very little volume. So instead of closing the store during that time, drive the volume on your lowest productive days. So they're using a high-level engine to find out what people are actually praying. So they know that I usually go to the store on the weekends, so I'm getting the Wednesday and Thursday now flyers saying, hey, if you come in, we'll give you an extra 25% off. So to make sure to change my habit to come in during those days.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to also just point out, because I'm seeing a question here from Chris around how you can use AI with LinkedIn data to find companies that are increasing their spend to find new opportunities, and we can talk to that. But another question that I got on WhatsApp, which I really want to gear towards Abhilash, is fine, AI, for example, in Sam's example, if a real estate agent wants to use it now to sort of make recommendation to prospective buyers and prospective sellers, could AI 6 months ago have told you that something like this is about to happen, or what the results of something like COVID-19 could be on the economy? Abhilash, can you talk a little bit about the global event index that you've developed? I think your student Samantha is also here on, who worked on, or may have worked with you on that project, could be wrong. But Abhilash, can you talk a little bit about that global event predictor that was also created at the AI Hub?
Well, it was understood that every event in the world has some impact on the currencies. And when we analyze on some commodities like gold, currencies, and oil, and there are a few other things. When we analyze the data, we observed that only gold had a very big impact to any event which was happening. So we took the gold and we formulated it in such a way that we could come up with a number which indicates the impact of an event. Yeah. So that was the global event index. Yeah. It had the price of the gold had a direct correlation with the event.
Makes sense. And Abhilash, I think what would be nice is if you want to share some details later on, maybe by email, about how people can use that global event index right now in light of COVID-19. I think this was created with a company called Forpay out in Richmond Hill. Yeah. I know that you're starting off a second phase. That would be very interesting, especially for businesses in Ajax, to look at what we're seeing as potential impacts on currencies over a period of time. If I'm not mistaken, that project also was in close proximity with the Bahamian government, and Dr. Kenneth Rogers from the Bahamas is involved in that project.
Yes, correct.
So this is a very good example of AI using predictions in terms of where things are going from a financial standpoint. Noopa, a question for you is, and this I find is a very interesting one from Chris, is can we use LinkedIn data to sort of target which companies could be in high spend, or which companies are open for business, and which companies should we be targeting? Is LinkedIn a good data source to use?
Of course, LinkedIn is anything that has documentation, and anything which has lots of people coming in and logging in is definitely a good source of data. And again, as said, you don't, when you scrape LinkedIn website or any other website for that matter to try to capture data, it's not going to be in a structured format. As Abhilash mentioned, that data would be in an unstructured format. Definitely it's a good source of information, but you will have to do a lot of pre-processing to get the data set that we could actually work with.
Yep, makes sense. And not all of that data is available openly. So Chris, to your question, it does require a little bit of getting that information and how you process that information. But it's not as simple as saying, let's just use LinkedIn data. You have to have certain subscriptions. You have to have certain access points in order to get that data. So we're about 2 minutes away from the close, because I did want to wrap up by 12:55. I want to close with closing comments from each of the panelists, unless there are any more questions. Noopa, from your standpoint, if you can provide 2 tips on how businesses now, after hearing you and what you know about Ajax and what you know about Durham region, 2 tips on what they can do to get started in the world of AI.
So definitely the first tip would be to collect data, and also make sure that you don't collect a biased data set. As I mentioned, in our health data set, one loophole is that we don't collect information from people who are asymptomatic. So we are actually collecting data from a very biased group who's always admitted to hospitals, right? So when you start collecting data, make sure that you have a data set which is not biased. And the second thing is that at the very stage when you try to collect data, make sure what is the specific problem that you are trying to solve, because not every data set conveys the same story or message when compared to others. So have a strong problem definition in hand first, and based on that problem definition, try to collect an unbiased data set.
Thank you. Abhilash, to you, not the same question, but something of a similar ilk, is Noopa mentioned something around bias data and how to collect data. Can you talk about one example on what do we mean by data collection, and a second example of how we can reduce bias in data sets?
Well, data collection is very simple. We have to save every bit of information we have regarding our customers, our say if say I'll take an example of the restaurant. So as I told you, we have to keep track of whatever is there, and we have to save everything, every information like the receipts and the amount which is coming in, the cash flow, everything. All this is crucial for our business, for forecasting, for predicting what's going to happen tomorrow or,
Yeah.
or 1 week later.
So
And
store and save all of the data.
yeah, just say every data.
Okay.
And regarding the bias, it's a very tough question. How to eliminate the bias? Bias is everywhere. It's tough. So whenever after looking at the data, then only we can decide how we can eliminate the biases. But yeah, but that's a tough question.
So have an eye for your blind spot. And with that, I'll turn it to Sam. Sam, if you can provide a couple of recommendations on tools people should be looking at, and maybe some sources for information. Tools maybe which can help you build a chatbot, tools that can help you understand machine learning. Can you give us a couple of examples there?
So there's a lot of great courses online. Actually, MIT and Harvard are actually offering some introductory to machine learning right now for free. And they're great introductory courses. Some of the tools that you're going to see very prevalent, unfortunately, they're more programming tools. So Python, unfortunately, is becoming mostly the base for creating some of these. But you can actually use Excel. If you have Office 365, there's actually a new module in Excel that can actually do 90% of the calculations for you. It actually can import all the different kind of database. If you store your data in database, it can actually extract it. It can actually convert it for you. So I'd look at your Excel, and you know, Dr. Excel is online. Great YouTube videos for that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So with that, we'll come to the conclusion, and I'll make a couple of closing statements before I turn it over to the town of Ajax to say a few words. You've heard about the importance of data. You've heard from us very clearly that there could be some companies that, well, there isn't much that you can do given the fact that you are high touch. However, using computer visioning technologies, using other NLP-based technologies, you could have some way to impact and access your customers. I'll give you another example is ICR that is based out of Ajax, which allows you to basically experience a cybersecurity environment in an escape room. They're now looking at virtual ways to get you to experience that escape room by sending the actual equipment to you in the form of something that is disposable. So there are different ways in which companies are looking to touch their clients, but you start off with the right data sets. Secondly, you want to look at what's open source, what's available out there, and what can you generate on your own through surveys, through social media, through interactions that you're doing on your website. Capture, store, document everything. And number three is how do you get started? I saw a couple of questions around asking us about which companies can we talk to, etc. One of the things that you want to do is you want to reach out to one of us at the AI Hub. There are three important things that we bring to the table. Number one is obviously the expertise in AI. Number two is a customer service that we will always respond to you and will always spend time to consult with you. But number three is access to funding. We work in an applied research model where typically some funds allow you to get 80% of the cash from the funding body. Some even allow you to get up to 100% of the cash to get your project funded. So if you have a project idea, you have an incorporation, and you're looking to pivot, the town of Ajax and the AI Hub is a very strong partnership. Reach out to us, reach out to me directly, follow us on social media, and we will be sure to help you and guide you. If not to work with us, at least make the right decision on which company you decide to invest with in order to grow the next series and stages of your business, or at least access some research funding to do so. With that, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you at the Little Doctors session at 6 p.m. today. That session is going to be geared towards kids. We're going to be asking questions like, what's the difference between coronavirus and COVID-19? They're not necessarily the same thing. We're going to be looking at some interesting data points for kids to look at. So that should be a lot of fun. If you have the time, please join us. I'm going to turn it over to Shaun if he has any closing comments to make. Shaun?
Oh, thanks, Ellie, and thanks everyone, all the presenters. It's always really humbling to join in on these and be the least educated person in the room. So It's great to hear all the great information from you. This is such an important topic, and anything we can do to help assist our businesses to get through this and get back on track after is time well spent. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Ali, for the shout out for tonight at 6 o'clock. Hope you'll join us for the Just for Kids Understanding COVID-19 event, and hope everybody has a great day. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Take care, everybody. See you later. Bye.
And